Hey guys, Andy Fortuna here, and I wanted to make a video about a simple process that I use with myself and clients to help relieve pain and discomfort that may be coming from soft tissue restrictions or tightness, to help freedom of movement, just to help you have more sense of awareness, but also the ability for your joints and your movement just to feel less restricted. And that's the soft tissue work, right? So I have a couple tools here, but I want to try to go through each one real quick, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about here. And that process is the scan, compress, and breathe. So scan is you're essentially looking, let's say if it's my quad here, right? So finding an area, so scanning the area to see if there's any tightness or buildup or accumulation or tenderness or even trigger point that needs to be worked. Then I'm going to use either a softball. I like to use a softball when it comes to like rolling around. But just for the sake of showing you guys, right, I'm going to scan, find that tenderness. I'm going to apply overpressure. So if it's a softball, I might be rolling on top of it, find that area. If I'm using any of these other modalities or equipment, then it's finding the area and letting it kind of like slowly melt into it, and that's the compressed part. And then from there is also the most important part is the breathing. So big inhale, long exhale. And allow the exhale to facilitate the release, right, or the softening of the area around the pressure, which allows the area that is built up or tight to kind of open up, right? So really what we're working with here is the nervous system, right? It's getting that area to kind of ease up, and then as the weight kind of sinks into it, either your weight or the weight you're using, an external weight, you start to get into deeper layers and help kind of desensitize, right? So the principle here is graded exposure. So over time, right, with that consistent pressure and your breath, you allow the tool to do the work, right? So very important is the breathing, right? Because if you're holding super tight and super tense, then you're just going to apply more pressure into the area and your body's not releasing, right? And if you're just holding on for dear life and just rolling and hopefully that gets better, then you're just building up more stress and pressure into the body. So if you really want to kind of find that area that needs to be worked, compress, right? So the compress has to be challenging, right? Is like, it's uncomfortable, but not a sharp pain. And a good way to think about it is it should be enough pressure where you can feel it targeting the specific area, but you're still able to breathe. If you're holding your breath or tensing up, then the pressure is too much or the area is too sensitive, so you may have to back off like a couple inches or a couple centimeters away from it and slowly work your way back into it. And you might kind of have that flow until eventually you find the actual center of that spot and you are working that area, okay? So I'm going to show you a couple tools here, right? So you can use a dumbbell, right? I like using weights because it allows me to work on the breathing part of it. When you're rolling around with a foam roller or even the softball or lacrosse ball here, right? You're too busy trying to find a comfortable position and hold, and then you're still now then holding this plank position and trying to breathe at the same time. When you have an external weight and you can find a comfortable position like I am here seated, I can now find, I'll show you this way, I can now find that area, right? So the weight is now applying pressure into the area, and I can apply overpressure, right? And this is relatively light. I would use a little heavier, and I can even put more weight by lifting the weight up so that it's pinpointing down, and then now I can essentially relax this area and let this weight, let the tool do the pressure for me, and I can do the breathing, right? And let's say like you find a good spot and you're like, I don't want to hold this, and you can find an external object to hold it up, right? And then literally all you're really doing is balancing it, like I'm not applying any pressure, into that area, and then now you can focus on relaxing the joint, relaxing the tissues, and working on your breath. And every exhale, you want to think and visualize you're working a little deeper of a layer, a little deeper of a layer, a little deeper of a layer. And sometimes, let's say there's 5 layers you're trying to get through, you may only get to layer 3 just because your body's like, I don't want anymore, right? Your nervous system is like, that's as much as I'm gonna let you kind of go into it. And then you kind of revisit, right? You don't want to do too much. You want to do just enough to kind of build, again, that graded exposure, allow your body to get more comfortable with the pressure. And as you kind of peel off those layers, or I shouldn't say peel off, I would say melt into those layers, you're gaining access to a whole other different type release, but you're also gaining access to more range, less discomfort because there's less of that buildup. And then you want to complement that with mobility work, with movement, with low to light strength training, and start to build up from there. So that's the dumbbell. Another way you can use is a kettlebell. Same idea, right? Because there's not weight on both sides, it's just straight down. You can potentially, this might be the tool for you. And you can use, right, so you have the flat part of the kettlebell, and you can use the round part, right? So the flat part is just a flat, think of like a sandwich maker, just flat on there. Now when you use the ball, right, the ball side of the kettlebell, then it becomes, the surface area becomes a little bit more pinpointed. So you can now work that area a little bit more, right? So for my quad here, I find that this kettlebell might be the best bet, right? So I can find that area and just breathe, right? If this seated position is uncomfortable or start to crank up, I'm trying to like tighten up here, I can go here and hang out here. And then you can just breathe. Inhale, exhale, right? Inhale for 4, exhale for 8. You can do box breathing. You can find whatever breath method works for you, but simply just breathing and letting the tissue soften, letting the knee soften, letting the foot soften, letting the whole leg soften, and let the weight do the work, okay? And like I said earlier, if it's too much, your body's gonna tell you, right? You wanna avoid, right, when you're doing any of the soft tissue work, you wanna avoid being bone on bone. Like, I don't want the kettlebell to be on my kneecap or on my joint line in this case. You don't want any like numbing or really like radiating pain. Sometimes you might get a specific point that's gonna radiate. Like for example, if I work this specific area and I might get a trigger point that's actually radiating some pain into the knee, that might be a really good spot to work on as long as the pain doesn't continue to escalate. You can breathe into it and you can relax. If you find it like being too much and it's like super sharp pain, then you wanna back off and find a different area and slowly work your way there. But those tender areas will build up and find those basically accumulation points or trigger points that can radiate and could be a big source of the discomfort you're having at the joint, wherever it may be, or just the discomfort at that local area. All right, so that's the kettlebell, right? You also have something like the club bell, right? So you may have seen stuff with like barbell work. Now the difference with barbell, you have this big barbell that's in the way. But with the club bell, you have this offset weight and you can do very similar idea, right? So kind of roll into that area. I can even apply overpressure with my hand. And the work that I'm doing to work the specific targeted tissue is a lot less versus me having to do push down or like roll like a tiger tail. Or even, it's also a lot less work than having to roll on the softball. But when you do pinpointed work with the softball, even though the mobility and the position might be difficult, sometimes this is needed because you can get into those specific areas, right? These tools sometimes can be limited in how specific you can get, right? Or not. Like the club bell has this ball right here. You can, same idea. Find that targeted tissue. And right, if I don't kind of pinpoint it with my hand or my finger and control it, it's gonna slip off. So I'm gonna find that area and let the weight of the club bell basically do its work. So I'm gonna let go of the knee, let go of the foot, right? So essentially, I have, again, targeted tissue pressure. Again, scanning the area, compressing the area, and then the most important part is the breathing, okay? I'm gonna show you real quick with the softball, right? So let's say I did all these 3, or I wanna do more specific work, then I can get the softball, right? Find the specific area and then hang out there, right? So, right, put it here on my knee, just above the kneecap, find that similar area I was working on, and literally hang out. But here's what I was talking about that plank position. Now I kind of have to brace myself here and at the same time relax my left leg. So it becomes a little difficult, but sometimes this is exactly what you need. Okay, so this is how I would do it with the softball. And then if this is too much, you can do it with the foam roller and then work your way into the softball. Because of the surface area of the softball can target a lot more specific tissue, and that might be too intense. So you want to find an entry level that is enough pressure where you can do the scan, compress, and breathe. And then eventually, once that's not doing enough work, then you kind of build up into a more intense tool. All right? So that's the scan, compress, and breathe process that I use for myself and for clients. All right, go ahead and try it out and let me know how it goes.